The CRTC is coming from somewhere above New South Wales in Australia. The latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. In what the media regulator calls a major step forward, but others call an attempt to crush free speech, Canada's CRTC has moved into regulation of podcasts. The new rules ensure online streaming services make meaningful contributions to Canadian and Indigenous content, says the government. The CRTC requires all online services with more than $10 million in revenue that operate in Canada and that offer podcasts to register with the government before November the 28th. The regulation says it applies to all streaming services that operate in Canada, not those physically based there. We're asking the CRTC what an online streaming service is. Is it Apple Podcasts or is it Wondery? And what operating in means. Do you have to have employees in Canada or just content available there? We're also asking what sanctions are liable should a company not register by November the 28th. The CRTC has not responded to a request that we made over 24 hours ago. The journalist Glenn Greenwald calls it one of the world's most repressive online censorship schemes. The Toronto Sun has also posted criticism. Now, we think that the Canadian radio market is the most regulated in the Western world, and it's no coincidence that it's also one of the worst performing radio markets, with dwindling audiences and poor finances that are worse than any other country. But all of the large owners of Canadian radio also own lucrative mobile, cable and television licenses, so they never speak out against the CRTC's rules, unless the regulator threaten those parts of their companies. Canada, we think, deserves better, but it's unlikely that it'll get it. In other news, Adam Bowie has written more about Edison podcast metrics after listening to our interview on the Podnews Weekly Review. Perhaps helpful for web apps and embedded players, we're linked to how to detect failed requests via web extensions today. The Italian podcast audience continues to grow. According to Ipsos, 39% of 16 to 60-year-olds are now listening to podcasts monthly. That's about 11.9 million people. Spotify for podcasters saw a significant increase in market share by episode, according to Livewire's data, though the data also says that it's improved accuracy and it's unclear what those improvements are. All podcast tracking services decreased, however this is again due to improvements in accuracy, so they say, but the number of episodes hosted on Amazon CloudFront hit a new record. And Buzzsprout saw a drop for Apple Podcasts and Spotify downloads. Google Podcasts posted its best ever download share of 3.5% on the platform, just in time for it to close. And in People News, the developer of podcast app Podverse, Mitch Downey, has quit his day job and will be working on the app full-time for the next 3 months. And yes, in case you haven't already realised, owing to delayed flights, this is a truncated edition of Pod News today. We're back to full force tomorrow. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.